Hi friends. So Corey and I just went golfing, so that's why I'm wearing this. But today's lesson is we are in Unit 9, Lesson 1. This is the last unit for math this year. And we are creating and naming equal groups. So if you remember from last week, we learned about partitioning. And partitioning, remember the big word partition, the word part is in it. So partitioning is when you make equal parts. So today we're going to add on to that, and we are going to be talking about fractions. Fractions is something you'll get into once you're in those higher grades, but we're going to start learning about them today. So with remembering the partitioning, that's what we're going to be doing today, and then we're going to be naming what those partitioned shapes look like. So if we look up at the board, I have the word fractions, and I have 3 squarish rectangles. So we are going to partition them first, and then I'm going to tell you the names for each one. After that, I'm going to take a picture of this board so you have it in your lesson plan, and then we will do a workbook page together at the end. So the very first, we'll just call them square, squares that we are going to partition is going to be we're going to make 2 equal rectangles inside the square. So remember, when we partition, they have to be equal parts. Okay, so lines aren't perfect, but I made 2 parts to my square. So the names for that, if I would fill in just this one, that would be 1/2 of the square. So one name is 1/2. So I'm going to write 1/2. So if I would then color in this part, I colored in the whole shape, so it would be 1 whole. So that should be pretty easy. When you're coloring in half, it's 1/2. But if you color in both, which makes the whole thing, it's going to be a whole, 1 whole. So now down here, we are going to do this again, but we are going to cut it into thirds. So remember, they have to be equal part. We have to partition them into equal parts. So I'm going to do that. Again, the lines might not be perfectly straight, but they're somewhat equal parts. So we have to find names for them. So if I would just color in that top part, since there are 3 parts, this would be one of those 3 parts. So it would be 1/3, 1/3. So 1 out of the 3 parts. So I'm going to put a 1, and I'm going to write third. 1/3. Okay, so again, if I would color in the next shape down, can you guys guess what that would be called? Hopefully you said 2/3, because 2 of the 3 parts are colored in, so it would be 2/3. And then if I colored the whole thing in, I just gave you a hint, if I colored in the whole thing, that would be called 1 whole. So if we made 2 parts up here and we made 3 parts here, down here I'm going to make this square have 4 parts. And remember, they have to be equal parts. So again, I'm just going to make lines, but instead of making horizontal lines, I'm going to make vertical lines. And as long as they're the same shape, the same equal part, then it should be okay. Okay, so that's not the best one. They're a little, they're not perfect, but there are 4 parts. So I'm going to name them. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 parts. So we're going to come up with some names for them now. So again, if I just color in 1 part, does anyone know what the name would be? Would it be 1/2? No, because that would mean it was half full. Would it be 1/3? No, because there's 4 parts. So if we have 4 parts, 1 of those 4 parts are colored in. So we would call that 1/4. So I'm going to write that down, 1/4. So if we kept going, and I colored in the second, now we have 2 of the parts colored in. So we could call that 2/4, but 2/4 is actually half. So another name would be 1/2. And then if we kept going, if I colored in the third part, do you guys know what that would be called? Remember, there's 4 altogether. How many are colored in? 3 are colored in. So it would be 3/4. 3/4 are colored in. And then if I colored in the whole thing, does anyone know what that whole shape what that whole name for the shape would be? If it's all colored in, the whole thing, it would be a whole, 1 whole. So I know that might be hard to see, but these are fractions. So we take the partitioning that we learned, we partition them into equal parts. And then the fractions are these names right here. We have 1/2, we have 1/3, 1/4. So it's however many parts you color in on a shape. We are going to get some more of this practice in our workbook. So if you guys want to grab the workbook and turn to page 220. So 220, and we'll do that next.